Well, um, I've known Jeremy Zogby for a long time, many, many years. Colleague of mine, we go way back. Good man. And I wanted to bring him on for an interview, but he said the topic is very controversial and he needs to be cautious. So I wasn't able to do a in-person interview with him, but I was able to do a on the phone email interview where he could be more controlled with the answers that he gave. We did a strict interview only on the article he already wrote. He did not provide me new information he has not already provided to the public. We simply did a deep dive on the article that he already wrote. He only gave me more understanding on something he already published. I was not given new information. I want to be very clear about that. So with us today is Jeremy Zogby, partner of John Zogby Strategies. Jeremy Zogby works for John Zogby Strategies. John Zogby Strategies is a well-recognized national polling agency. So they're experts in polling and have been for a while. This is the article he wrote that got my attention. Who Owns the Unity Market in Politics? Polling Who We Really Are, Part 2 by Jeremy Zogby. And this is the article that we did a deep dive on. We didn't get new information. We just did a deep dive so that I could correctly understand the article that he did. That's all that really happened. The source of our division. This is a conversation-changing question. Which of the following statements comes closer to your view regarding hyperpolarization? Is it mainly the fault of my opposing party, or is it equally the result of both parties? Over half, 50%, overall, half, 50% of voters acknowledge it is equally both parties, while 35% who say their opposing party is to blame. Among those who say the fault lines with both parties includes 40% of Democrats and 51% of Republicans, 62% of independents. That also means that half of the country doesn't believe it's both parties. 50% of voters acknowledge it's equally both parties. 50% of voters don't acknowledge it's both parties. Democrats, a minority, say that includes both parties. Only 40% of Democrats believe it's both parties. 60% of Democrats believe it's just the Republicans. 50% of Republicans think it's just the Democrats. Back in October, I asked a similar question. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? The real threat to our democracy is not the other party, but both parties that are too busy scapegoating each other. Overall, 70% of voters agreed with the above statement, and sentiment was equally intense across party line. Conclusion. When Americans are presented with views at loggerheads that allow them to box themselves in, the results follow. Polling data will always show voters intensely in opposition. But you can ask the questions differently, and that's what he was getting at. So this was rough. These are rough notes from my discussion with him. So most polling today fits the politics of today, which is division. Politicians and the media ask polling questions in a manner that leads to division. You can ask questions that lead to unity, which is why this article talks about who has the market on unity polling. Because as pollsters, he can see no one is doing this with polls. Only one candidate is trying to reach out to both parties, Robert Kennedy. No one else is doing that in politics. Key takeaway is that 50% of the country isn't sure it is both parties making division worse. Only half of America thinks it is both parties making division worse. What he's talking about here that I didn't get when I was initially reading the article is why it's called Who Owns the Unity Market in Politics. He was talking about how he would ask a survey, and if you said, is it my party or the other party who is making all the problems? That question is divisive. Is it me that's making problems, or is it the other guy that makes all the problems? He said you could also ask a different question where you don't give him two options. Do you feel the real threat to our party is that the two parties are scapegoating each other? Yes or no? So is it my fault that my party's causing division, or is it the other guy? 50% say it's both parties, 50% say I'm not sure, maybe it's just the other guy. Okay. But when we give them only one statement, is it true or false that both parties are at fault scapegoating? 70% say true. And what he was pointing out is that if you ask the question where there's multiple points and you already frame it in us versus them, you're going to get divisive answers. But if you ask the questions in a way that kind of asks Americans to come together as Americans, you can get different unifying answers. And so he's saying you can ask questions that bring us together. You can also ask questions that divide us. And what he's saying is almost all the polling of today is designed to cause division. As an expert in polling, most polling is never designed to be unifying. And that goes on the left and the right. So if we look at the Democrats and the liberal media, neither the Democratic Party nor the liberal media does polls in a way that unify Americans. Neither the Republican Party and Fox News or conservative media does polls in ways that unify Americans. Liberal media, MSNBC, CNN, etc., whatever, do polls in a way that pits us versus them. Republicans and Fox, Breitbart, Newsmax do polls that pit us versus them. And so what he's saying is nobody is making polls that are trying to bring Americans together. Everybody in the media and everybody in politics, except for Robert Kennedy out of the entire thing, so all the Democrats and all the Republicans and all the left media and all the right media are all basically making polls designed to cause division. And neither party is attempting to position itself as the party to bring everyone together. So the Democrats could be asking questions in a manner that shows everybody agrees. They could be trying to have polls that bring Americans together. They could be trying to be the party that's going to merge everybody together. Republicans could be doing the same thing. Republicans could be asking polls that show Americans have a commonality. They're not. So if the Democratic Party is not really trying to push polls that show commonality, and the Republican Party is not really trying to push polls that show commonality, then neither party is trying to bring Americans together. And both of them are trying to cause division. Who owns the unity market is the question, because the Democrats aren't even trying for the unity market and the Republicans aren't even trying for the unity market. Both political parties and the representative media organizations all do polarized polling. He showed you how you can ask the questions to make them to bring people together or to make them to pull people apart. And he's saying the Republicans and the Democrats both do that. And I can't see either party trying to unify the country based upon their polling. That's what he's saying. So apparently neither party is trying to frame questions in a way that brings Americans together. So much so, he says, I can't see any political party or any politician who's really trying to frame things in a way that brings Americans together. A very negative sign for the state of America today from a recognized polling expert who's been in the field for over decades. We'll leave it there.